Once upon a time, a hunter and his dog were lost in a deep forest. Out of food, the starving hunter sat by his fire one night, and finally he could stand it no longer. He whipped out his knife and whacked off his dog's tail and put it on the fire to boil. When he was through, only the clean bones were left, and he tossed them to the whimpering dog, who devoured the remains and then licked his master's hand in gratitude. That's the story of federal aid.
Are you listening, Uncle Sam? A program featuring the thoughts and voices of grassroots America will return after these words from our sponsor.
Are you listening, Uncle? Well, as you recall, Sam, last month we listened to excerpts from a speech delivered by that modern-day Will Rogers, Tom Anderson. And there was so much good material that had to be omitted because of the limitation of time that we decided you ought to have a chance to hear the rest. You know, Sam, there are just an awful lot of us who think along exactly the same lines as Tom Anderson, but only he can express it in such a way that, well, you just can't help laughing over even the most serious subjects. So here we go again with publisher and humorist Tom Anderson, this time speaking on the subject of socialism versus freedom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, super patriots, fellow crackpots, members of the Constitutional Underground, Republicans, and fellow Democrats. I'm mighty glad to be here again. Once upon a time, a hunter and his dog were lost in a deep forest. Out of food, the starving hunter sat by his fire one night, and finally he could stand it no longer. He whipped out his knife and whacked off his dog's tail and put it on the fire to boil. When he was through, only the clean bones were left, and he tossed them to the whimpering dog, who devoured the remains and then licked his master's hand in gratitude. That's the story of federal aid. The hunter, of course, the hunter is Uncle Sam, the grateful dog is us. Dogs can live without tails, but the hunter is still famished. We can't have federal aid and freedom. We shouldn't have federal aid and freedom. The Supreme Court has ruled, and in that instance I agree, that which the government subsidizes it should control. Federal aid is federal control. The subsidy-happy American people, with the enthusiastic cooperation of the communists and the socialists within and without, are destroying the land of the free and the home of the brave. In America today, 1/4 of the people are living off of the other 3/4, completely or partially. In socialist America today, 48 million people are getting regular government checks. That's roughly, and it is rough on those of us who pay the bills and don't get any, one check for every other household in America. That's even rough on the post office delivering them. I dreamed a while back the whiz kids had an answer for that too, that they were going to start a new department of government, which they are very good at, to integrate with all possible speed woodpeckers and carrier pigeons to form a pigeon pecker corps. These pigeon peckers would not only be able to deliver the 48 million government checks, but they'd knock on the door when they got there. I think one of the reasons we're in the difficulty we're in is that certain segments of our society haven't realized that freedom is one ball of wax. A lot of doctors have just now waked up to the fact when their own ox is gored that if we have socialized agriculture, we are going to have socialized medicine and a socialized America. Socialism is planned tyranny by the few. It means government ownership or management of banks, railroads, power, newspapers, television, radio, schools, steel, automobiles, and you. Most of us are against socialism, if it's called that. Middle of the road of Norman Thomas. 6 times candidate for President of the United States on the Socialist Party ticket, said, quote, "The American people will never knowingly adopt socialism. But under the name of liberalism, they will adopt every fragment of the socialist program until America will one day be a socialist nation without knowing how it happened." Arthur Schlesinger, Jr. says that socialism is the way to oppose communism. Killer Khrushchev is also on record in 1960 saying we cannot expect the American people to jump from capitalism to communism. But we can assist their elected leaders by giving them small doses of socialism until suddenly they awaken to find they have communism. Sadly, we've got a lot of business and professional leaders in this country today who are determined to ride what they think's the wave of the future. Some people can't understand how these rich people, these Kennedys, these Roosevelts, these Rockefellers, why would they be for socialism? Don't forget that communism in its purest essence, true communism, Lenin's Marxist communism, called for an aristocracy of leadership and wiping out the middle class. Somebody's got to run General Motors. Somebody's got to run the steel companies. Maybe these fellows figure if somebody's got to do it, it might as well be they. We conservatives are constantly attacked for being beginners, wanting to turn the clock back, old moss back, reactionaries. Somebody accused me a while back of even being against that little darling Caroline Kennedy. The only thing I've got against her is the people she associates with. We conservatives are accused of being against all change. I think most of us are for change, any good change. But we are not for changing the system that produced the highest amount of freedom and the greatest prosperity known in human history for an age-old failure, socialism. We're not for change just to be changing, like the fellow who just for a change decided he'd start parting his hair crossways, ear to ear. And his last remaining friend says, "Well, how do you like your hair parted ear to ear?" And he said, "Oh, I like it fine, except for one thing. People always whispering into my nose." Actually, there are so many things to be for that I sort of feel like a mosquito at a nudist camp. I know what I ought to do, but I don't know where to begin. But I'd like to try to tell you a few things that I'm for. I'm for dying on my feet in preference to living on my knees. For again teaching the meaning of freedom and patriotism in our schools. For a law requiring that the total number of federal agricultural employees shall not exceed the total number of farmers. For the Liberty Amendment. For limiting all of our federal elected employees to one term. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's impractical. It takes one term to get in there and know the ropes. Well, that's just the point. You know, most politicians are neither dedicated leftists or dedicated rightists. They're dedicated to staying there. It becomes an obsession with them that overrules everything else. Some cynics say that the answer to the professional politician is just to elect rich people, that they won't have to steal. Of course, stealing has no connection with riches. Most thieves didn't want bread, they want pile or mode. Most politicians are like cockroaches. It's not what they steal and carry off, it's what they fall into and mess up. Many years ago, a drove of wild hogs lived in a big bend of the Ocmulgee River in Georgia. They had survived floods and fires and freezes and hunters and droughts. Hunters bragged when their dogs fought the hogs and returned alive. Finally, one gallus man came by the country store on the river road and asked how he could find the wild hogs. All he had with him was a one-horse wagon, an axe, a lantern, some quilts, some corn, and a single-barrel shotgun. Several months later, the hog-hunting stranger came back to the same store and asked for help to bring out the wild hogs. He said they had them over in a pen in the swamp, and people came from miles around to see the captive hogs, which all of the natives knew couldn't be captured. It's all very simple, droned the one gallus stranger. First, I put out some corn. For 3 weeks, they wouldn't eat it. Then some of the young'uns grabbed an ear here and there and scampered to the underbrush. Soon they were all eating it. They knew that if they didn't, one of the others would. So then I began building a pen around the corn, a little higher each day. Before long, I noticed they were all waiting for me to bring the corn, and had stopped grubbing for acorns and roots. I built the trap door. Naturally, they raised Cain when they seen I had 'em. But I can pin any animal on the face of the earth if I can first get him to depend on me for a free handout. Fellow hogs, we've been fenced. We've been had by one gallus socialist. Let's dig out.
Are you listening, Uncle Sam? A program featuring the thoughts and voices of grassroots America is produced by the John Birch Society, directed by Ed Griffin.
Major portions of today's program were condensed from the LP recording entitled Bipartisan Treason, a lecture by publisher and humorist Tom Anderson, and was used with permission of Key Records. If you would like information on how to obtain the full unedited version for your record library, just send a stamped self-addressed envelope to the John Birch Society, San Marino, California. That's the John Birch Society, San Marino, California.